public. I just want to say that welcome everybody here today and hope you enjoy the meeting. And first of all, could I have apologies for absence, please, Rebecca?
Yes, Chair, we'll have Councillor Pauschke and Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you. Have we got any apologies from the floor? No. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Could I have any disclosures of members' interests? Anyone got any to declare?
Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Yes.
Chair, I'd like to give a determination, disclosures of members' interests on item 6.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else? No. May I ask everybody to turn their phones off, please, or put them on silence, if you don't mind. Mark?
I'm a member of the Ashington Town Council, as well as us, so I'll declare an interest. Even though there haven't been any...
But there's nothing on today, Mark. That's...
I think, if I can just interject here,
Chair.
I've had a word with Councillor Purvis and Councillor Ball earlier in respect of application number 6, because it states, I think, on page 17 that an objection has been received from the parish council. And then on page 18 it says no response has been received. I've spoken to both councillors and they've stated that they've had no involvement whatsoever in this application. As far as they're aware, it hasn't been to the, I'm not sure if it's been to the parish council or not. However, so that although they're declaring that they're a member of the parish council, they're fully entitled to take part in that application. And in fact, I think Will Lang, the planning officer, has confirmed that in fact it's a typographical error on page 17, and there's been the true position is on page 18 that no response has been received from the parish council.
Yeah, I think this was a historical one originally. That's so it's got nothing really to do with this one. It was a historical one. Just to confirm that, yes. That's probably why I didn't bring it up, because you know it's nothing to do with the one that we're sitting hearing today. Thank you, Brian.
Chair, just to come back in on my disclosures of members' interests. What I'll do is, as chair of the planning, I'll introduce agenda 5, and I will leave the room for agenda 6. And with the chair's permission, I would also like to bring agenda 7 forward to deal with first.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Brian. Well, we'll move on then straight away, and I'll hand over to the chair of the planning, Councillor Brian Gallagher. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to present an application to the committee. The application number is 21/03198/CCD. And it's for, the address site is for Croftway Primary Academy, William Street, Blyth. And could I bring in the officers to introduce that, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this application is in relation to Croftway Primary School in Blyth, and the proposal is to increase the fencing to 2.1 metres in height, freestanding, and 2.1 metres above the dwarf walls to improve the overall security of the site. And as the introduction says there, the proposals will bring together the mismatched style of fencing and gates that's currently in place. So this is the site, hatched in red, and this is the proposed fencing plan. Essentially, the new fencing will surround the whole perimeter of the school. The different types just really denote the different types of fencing in terms of whether that's going to be a freestanding fencing or whether it's going to be on top of a dwarf wall. So that's all the different types relate to, but it is essentially 2.1 metre high fence right round the school. So this is the fence. The top left box, the very top layer of fencing is what is there at the moment, and the one just below that is the proposed fencing. And it's the same on the other boxes. The top fence that you can see in each of the boxes is what's there at the moment, and the fence directly underneath all of those shows how that fencing will look once it's put in place. So you can see the difference. Some of them go from ground to the top, some of them sit on top of a dwarf wall, but essentially they're all going to amount to about 2.1 metres in height. These are just some photographs really to show you the site down Bishopton Street. where you can see some of the mismatch there of the existing fence. Again, Bishopton Street. This is the fencing down William Street. And again, further pictures down William Street. And from a planning perspective, there aren't any objections to the fence. As it says, it's just merely for security reasons and to tidy the whole site up. So the application is recommended for approval, Chair, subject to the conditions within the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judith. Has anybody indicated they want to speak around this particular plan application?
No, there's no speakers, Chair.
Great. Can I open the debate for members to ask plan officers any questions?
Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering why this has actually come to us. Obviously, in the introduction, it says it's been looked at and it's been decided to bring it here, but I'm a bit of a loss to understand why.
Chair, it was just when it goes on the referral list, it was thought that just because it's a school and therefore of interest to the local community, so they could see, and it was just open so everybody could see what was going to be happening at the school, rather than it just happen and people wonder what was going on. So it was just really to bring to members' attention that was what was going to happen.
You happy with that response, Councillor? Anybody else? We'll move the next agenda down is the rules of debate, so we need a proposer and a seconder, please.
I move the recommendations, Chair.
Okay. Thank you
Chair,
very
can I
much.
just clarify who seconded that? Was it Councillor Parry?
Councillor Parry, yes.
Thank you.
So can we take this to a vote, please?
Could I just,
Sorry, wait.
Chair,
Sorry, can I just bring in the...
there needs to be, well, if anyone wants to debate, members can debate the application, and then as the proposer, Councillor Reid would have the last say.
Okay.
that'll make a change, won't it? I think, if the school want to do it, that's fine. I'm still a bit of a mystery why it's here, but anyway, I take what Judith Murphy says is why it's here. But for me, I just was wondering, if the school not got something better to spend the many thousands of pounds on than replacing a fence? That's my only thing, really. I mean, it's going to cost a fortune. And I would have thought that perhaps investing in the child's education rather than turning the site into what could be more like a prison than a school. But that's just my way of thinking. So, let's just do it. I'm quite happy to vote for it when the time comes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Corey?
I couldn't see why this come to this panel either, because it just seems straightforward to me. One, I think it's going to make the school look better and the surrounding areas look better rather than having a mismatch of fence. So I don't have an issue with it. But I just think it would have just been easier just to sort it out.
Anybody else like to debate? Councillor Lang?
What colour's the fence going to be?
It's just a typical steel iron fence.
What, sorry?
It's just a typical steel stroke iron fence.
Yeah, but this is a blue fence. Is it going to be replaced with a blue fence?
No, it's all just going to be the same colour, the steel effect. Yeah.
Steel fence?
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. Can I just ask as well that the gates to the school are quite ornate? Are they just going for scrap, or is anybody...
I've got no idea, Chair.
All right.
Didn't see about the gates.
Well, I'm just thinking what we can do then.
Just to get involved with the debate as well, there was only one comment of one of the neighbours which it was a concern more than anything else, and the response has been given back to them from Highways, and they're quite happy with that. So it seems to be a straightforward plan application. Anybody else want to speak? No. So that being said,
Just if Councillor Reid wants to sum up. but he may not.
I shan't prolong the agony, Chair. Let's just vote.
Okay, then we'll take it to the vote then, please. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I don't know whether anybody wants to actually make a note that Councillor Reid moved something and it was accepted unanimously, which must be some sort of record.
Yeah. The next part is it ask permissions to bring forward agenda 7, bring it forward, and then it's just generally for members information of reports of the progress of the planning appeals. So can we note that, please? Great. Thank you very much. That being said, I've declared an interest on the next item, which is item 6. I'll leave the room and I'll hand over to Councillor Corr for the chair of the meeting.
We'll just wait until Councillor Gallagher's left the room. Right, so next application, agenda item 6, page 17, application number 20/0320/FUL. Proposal is a change of use from utility room to a hair salon and erection of a fence to the side of the property. And the site address is 2 Hounslow Drive, Fallowfield, Ashington, NE 638LZ. So, we'll just move over to the planning officer now. So, any updates, changes to recommendations and the present report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. As say, is 2 Hounslow Drive. This is a south-facing detached dwelling in a well-established residential area. The application is for a change of use to a utility room for a hair salon and means of enclosure that has been erected to enclose some open space to the side garden. Before you can see the map to give a general area, both photographic and OS. So to start, we'll start with the change of use of the utility room. The proposal is to see one person, one client a day. There are to be no additional employees other than the applicant, and additional car parking spaces be provided for a client at the front of the property. The principle of it is officer opinion that sticking to the one client a day, this is something that normally considered home working and would not normally require planning permission. Discussions with highways have provided the additional parking space, so not to increase street congestion. And the applicant has agreed to conditions to ensure that there's no clients and the one person per day. And as we see, the floor plans as existing and the site plan there. The fence to the rear of the property, so beyond the front building line, is up to 1.8 metre close bordered fence. This has enclosed land. It is, well, the land was reputedly maintained by the council, wasn't owned by the council, and the applicant has went through the correct procedures to identify the landowner and serve notice. Once the fence comes to the front of the property, it drops to lower in height to more reflect the front garden. The surrounding area, there are a mix of hedges and fences against the highways for the means of enclosure, and the front gardens in the surrounding area are a mix of open plan and some low means of enclosure, ranging from fences to open post railings. For context, we have the front photos there. The photo on the left there is up to the front elevation with the replaced street sign. the photo on the right is the rear elevation, as you can see how far it juts out into what was open space. From here we have the internal of the utility room fitted out. We see 2 chairs. While there is 2 chairs, there is the proposed condition agreed by the applicant to have one customer per day and no additional employees. The main principles here we need to consider the principle of the development, which officers consider to be acceptable, the impact on visual amenity, which officers again consider to be acceptable. There has been a total of 20 objections received from 17 addresses. They are as in the officer report, with 3 letters of support from 2 addresses, again as in the officer report. The relevant local plan is the Warnsbeck District Local Plan, within effect with the Northumberland Planning, the National Planning Policy Framework and public guidance. The emerging local plan is a material consideration, but is not the adopted local plan as yet. I believe that completes the report.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll now move to the public speaking. So I'd just like to remind everybody that whoever's speaking, they will have 5 minutes, but I am aware that we have a lady who will be speaking on behalf of all attendees present. So if this lady would just like to make herself aware, that's Mrs. Thompson.
I think, Chair, I think, is it right that you want a reminder when you've got 1 minute left?
If you could, yes, please.
Right.
Yes, thank you. Okay, when you're ready.
Okay, so the reasons for the objections from the residents is under Plan Policies GP1, the application fails to demonstrate sequential testing and the reuse of existing buildings in the area. Policy STP 3.E, the application fails to minimise the impact upon local amenity for new or existing residents. Plan Policy ECN 11, the application fails to fully address highways, access and amenity for point B, whilst restrictive covenants are not a planning consideration. These have been highlighted as part of the objections as the estate is legally protected. Under Principles of Development, the applicant states 1 customer per day and no customers waiting. Inaccurate responses have been provided throughout this planning process, e.g. when asked how many bedrooms the house has, they responded 3 when it was known that there was 4. If they can submit a reduced number of bedrooms, how accurate is the customer number of 1? A similar application nearby was refused, planning on the grounds it may lead to other applications of a similar nature. It was rejected as it was recognised that this is a residential estate and to grant plan permission would change the residential amenity and open the way for lots of other planning applications. Changing the house from C3 use to C3 plus A1/E1 could result in applications for other professional services and retail. The application will have a detrimental effect on not only the residential estate but also the town centre and existing commercial premises as it draws trade and footfall away. Planning is suggesting that conditions can be applied. How is the local authority going to enforce these? Do they have the resources available? Will this be another cost of the local authority in managing this and future businesses on the estate? In terms of residential amenity, increased traffic congestion, noise and general disturbance from visiting clients is detrimental to the amenities of the occupiers of the nearby houses. I would ask the question, how can the application from one house be approved when 60% of the houses in Hounslow Drive and DFL submitted objections to the application? The remaining 40% didn't submit any comments, probably due to the problems access to the plan portal. Of all of the public responses submitted, there was 90% objections and 10% support coming from family who don't live on the estate nor in Ashington. Fallowfield is known as a quiet residential estate that people aspire to live on, meaning a low turnover of residents. Changing the character and residential amenity will deter people from wanting to live in the area. The extension was built with a door and a window to a utility room belonging to a house. This was a new feature for the house and accepted on the original plan application as it was for residential use. If the Salon is granted, the privacy of 4 Hounslow will be lost as the Salon customers arriving or leaving will look directly into the rear garden. The window and door having been built in the submitted plan location has planning noticed this. In terms of parking and highway safety, the house requires 3 parking spaces for a 4-bedroom house under Class 3 regs. The house requires an additional parking space for the A1/E1 application. Highways has stated that the lack of 1 parking space wouldn't be enough to substantiate a refusal on highway safety grounds, as the salon will only have one customer at any one time. The highway officer has suggested that additional parking should be across the driveway, which means cars parked on the pavement restricting pedestrians, a number who are elderly. This is within 10 metres of the junction and the access points of the street. The applicants have stated the local postman parks opposite their house. This will lead to further parking problems as cars try to enter and leave the cul-de-sac, leaving a single-width car space for access and exit. Parking in the area is already tight with visitors from other houses. Will the additional parking overspill onto Blackthorn Way? Other issues. Precedent will be set for commercial and business uses in the area. Whilst people were initially encouraged to work from home, that is not the case now. How many businesses, if this application is approved, would you have once the floodgates are open? Has a sequential test been undertaken to see if there are any suitable commercial properties? We've got a die in High Street and a number of places where hairdressers could work from existing salons who rent chairs. The local plan is there to try and revitalise these areas. This application doesn't match the local plan. What if there's a future increase in scale of the development? The hairdressers already operate in mobile and may choose to bring more clients to our house. Does that mean that they'll put in a further application, Part Retro 3, and then further challenge from local residents again? I'm going to quickly summarise and then come back to some other points. Surely the best judges about whether the neighbourhood has been harmed are the neighbours. Of all the neighbours who commented, there were all objections with none registering support. Plan report fails to take into account the objections from the majority of the households. Nolan Committee on Public Lights states there is nothing intrinsically wrong if the planning committees do not invariably follow the advice of officers. Planning officers exist to advise planning committees which are entitled to reach their own decisions by attaching different weight to the various plan criteria. I hope that the Planning Committee acknowledge and support the 60% of the neighbours who objected this application. As local councillors, we elect you into a position of trust to make decisions for the benefit of the whole community, not just one household. By refusing this planning application, you ensure that residents can continue to enjoy the character and privacy of the area and choose to live in. The planning application is not new nor unique. There's been similar applications on the estate that have been refused. Other planning applications around the country have refused these types of application following national planning policy, which has gone on appeal with the planning inspectorate and been dismissed. I'll give you an example, HSFA 18-00684. In terms of the fence, is that it?
Sorry, Mrs Thompson, your time is up, I'm afraid. But thank you for that. Right. We'll now go over to any local parish no, we have no local councillors or parish councillors to talk on this one. So we'll now go over to the applicant / supporter, if we have one present.
Yeah, William Scott.
Yeah, of course. Mr Scott?
That's 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes, Mr Scott.
Right, thanks. Really, I'm just want to try and put across Laura and Mark's point on this. The salon's purely an opportunity for Laura to work at home part-time to give her the chance to look after 2 young children and make a small wage. A lot of the objections seem to be about parking. As the report says, it will be a single-person salon with one customer in the salon stroke utility room, which you can see on the drawings, the washing machine and the dryer, so it is a dual-use thing. There'll be 1 car per customer, if any at all, on a part-time basis. On the days, Laura will be able to fit in around the children. Some days there wouldn't be any clients at all, hardly an intrusion on anybody's daily life. Laura was hoping that living in the area, local people would feel it was somewhere they could consider close to walk to rather than travelling outside the estate. They're the only people on the street who have actually addressed parking issues with a drive for 3 cars at any one time. Most of the objectors feel it's okay for them to park anywhere, even when their own driveways are clear. The parking wasn't raised as a concern with either the highways or the planning department. And I would say, have the council had any complaints from any objectors about the postal delivery vans in the cul-de-sac daily? I would say the postal and delivery traffic is probably more of an issue than 1 car pulling off a driveway. Regarding any of the concerns, not one person in the street came to Laura and Mark to highlight any concerns over parking or otherwise anything they have done, even when the work was being carried out on the house, which was completed nearly 2 years ago. Laura and Mark, they want to do things correctly, hence the planning application, rather than running an undercover business. The direct neighbours were always aware of the intent. Being called disingenuous really upsets them both more than it should. The whole building and planning process was done using professional advice in full view of anyone directly concerned. If they were disingenuous, they wouldn't have put themselves through all of this turmoil turmoil and just run an undercover business with no controls. I would suggest if the salon is an issue, any objectors look on the Fallowfield residents' Facebook page. There are open advertisements for services and goods run from home. Allegedly, one objector, actually their partner, is alleged to run a small business from home making snooker cues, which seems a little bit hypocritical. And I would like to think the same level of objection has been voiced to those people. The fencing, any objections were addressed by the Highway and the Planning Department. The fencing is identical to the houses on the estate already granted permission. And I would say again, to any of the objectors, the civic mindedness and their sense of duty would compel them to look at all the corner houses right through the estate who have done this already, either with or without permission. Final few points. The salon poses no threat to the appearance, safety or value of the estate. Nothing is externally visible. The status quo won't be changed. The small part-time salon will be a regulated business, not an undercover out of view of the relevant public bodies. On a personal note, and this is from me, I've been shocked at the level of abuse and how Mark and Laura have been treated and made to feel like they've done something really bad in their own home. The distributing of letters full of false information by one person in particular who actually tried to whip the residents up into a frenzy. And one of the comments from the objectors was that the supporters don't even live on the estate. Well, not all the objectors. One of the supporters didn't live on the estate. Some of the objectors don't actually live on the estate. And from me, watching your family in tears because someone hiding behind a curtain or a keyboard is actually watching everything you do from your house and having to justify who comes in and out of your house to support an application and making false claims, which actually does take up council time. It's not a nice feeling. And what people should remember, this is actually Laura and Mark's home. They actually live there, and it's where they want to raise their family. So to make them feel as if, you know, this is like the next branch of Vidal Sassoon is a little bit ridiculous. They've agreed to one person, and there will be no more applications going in.
I'm afraid your time is up there, Mr. Scott. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right. We'll now move on to the members' questions to the planning officers. If any of the members have any questions, raise your hand, seek me out, and I'll write your name down in any order. Okay? Councillor Wallace.
Thank you. It's a retrospective planning application. Can I ask, can I ask, is the part retrospective for the fencing only? And the reason I ask that is, I think it would be important for members to know if the hairdressing business is actually retrospective as well.
I believe at the time of the application, the fence is retrospective, while the hairdressing has been set up, I believe it's not yet in operation. It wasn't at the time of the application was written up.
Right. Thank you. If I can come back, Chair. The expiry date for the application was January 21. That's 9 months ago. I'll repeat my question. Is that a planning application, or are you aware of any hairdressing business going on at the moment?
No, Council, I believe that the hairdressing is in operation at the moment.
Thanks, Chair. My reason for asking that question is I was surprised to read that the Highways Department had written to you, the officer, that they'd visited this site on a number of occasions. I've heard over the years, many years in the local government, how difficult it is to get highways to do anything. And I don't mean to be nasty, I mean to be honest. And to visit a business that isn't in existence seems a bit strange to me, and I think we can actually disregard that as evidence of any description, of any meaning at all. I can't see the purpose of why Highways would visit a site to determine what difference one vehicle would make. I was confused with that.
I would say, Chair, obviously the fence has been extended outwards to include open space. So highways also inspect the site to look at the impact of that on the highway and whether it cut on visibility displays. So that's another reason why they went out on site.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm pleased Highways was looking at land that didn't belong to us.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Any other members have any other questions? Councillor Purvis?
Can I just ask, there was a previous refusal for a Salon.
Councillor Purvis, need your mic on.
There was a previous application for a Salon. Can you just give me a bit more information why that was that wasn't approved, please?
Certainly, Councillor. If you look into the report, there is a reference number. If I double check my copious notes. Yes, the reference number for that application was 03/00290/COU. It was elsewhere in the estate. Looking at the planning history, it was for a far larger use with more bays and looked like more employees. So it was much more of a commercial use in comparison to what's proposed here.
Thank you, Councillor Purvis. Councillor Grimshaw.
Thank you. I would just like to say that, you know, in view of the last refusal on the hairdresser's site, I'm just a little bit concerned about this one as well, because I don't think that conditions and control suggested will be sufficient to have a proper control, to have the impact of the neighbours and residents. And how can NCC, like Councillor Wallace suggests, monitor this? Because I find it very difficult to apprehend that there's just going to be one person per day going into a hairdresser salon when somebody spent a significant amount of money to actually kit it out, and they're just going to have one a part-time basis. I don't see how they're going to make any money on that. And I'm just a little bit concerned about the last application, because this is historical, and you know, and I do appreciate the fact that we've got to look on this differently. But when it goes back and everything was flouted before and gone into the history of it, that the residents actually and rightly say was concerned, because this has gone on for virtually 2 years. And I just think that, you know, if we start looking at applications willy-nilly, where's it going to end, and how many estates are going to be flooded with hairdressers being able to use their business there? And as another person rightly said, you know, we need the high streets now reinvigorated. But I just find this, you know, just beyond belief, to be quite honest with you, because, you know, this was a complete refusal the last time, because it was up and running. And that was advertised, that, you know, the appointments and what they offered, and the salon was actually up and running, and it had difficulties with parking. The fence was moved. It wasn't in planning. They removed bushes and everything. They were actually stopped by someone to said, "What do you think they're doing? Because we look after that," and that was the Highways. And I know I'm going back, but this to me is just, you know, I just can't see how it's going to be controlled and monitored, even if it's just one person.
Chair, could I respond to that?
Yeah.
Just a number of points have been raised that I would just like to make some comment on. First of all, the comment about there can't be any money made from this venture, and that is not a planning consideration at all. In terms of highways, the Highways officer has visited the site, and they've put their comments on the public access, and they've clearly said that, you know, they don't have any concerns around the parking, given the number of parking spaces the dwelling has, and that there is only going to be one per day. Now, the application states there's going to be one customer per day. We've heard that the applicant is recently come off maternity leave. She's trying to build a business back up. It's not fair or realistic of us to assume that that's not the truth. If she has said that there is one person to be visiting a day, then that's what we should be assessing this application on. And similarly, we shouldn't be looking back to previous applications. We don't know the full ins and outs of that. That's not what we are scrutinising or interrogating here at committee. We're looking at the merits of this application based on one visitor per day. The two chairs that you saw on the photograph, one is at a sink, one is where the customer will sit and have their hair cut. It's not two chairs for two clients. It's, as I've said, as salons work, one for the sink, one for where the client will have the hair cut. So it's not to sway any decision here, it's just to put the facts to you and what you do really need to be considering. In terms of, it's opening the floodgates, each application, as you all know, is assessed on its own merits. Now, this application, this proposal, is at committee because there is a fence involved, and it's that side of the proposal that requires planning permission. The hairdressing business itself doesn't actually require planning permission based on what it is proposing at this time. It is going to be controlled by conditions, so if there is any intensification of that use, then we could step in and we would review all of that. But as it stands at the moment, the applicant could actually conduct the business under permitted development rights. And we do have many businesses which are conducted from homes, such as dog grooming businesses, which again, it's 1 dog per time in garages, converted garages. It's not about the change of use as such, it's about the impact of that use and that it remains ancillary to the main purpose of the building itself, the dwelling. So yes, if use intensifies, noise starts to be generated, deliveries get beyond something that's acceptable, odours, anything like that, then that is getting beyond something that's acceptable under permitted development, which we would investigate. But as it stands at the moment, not only is it acceptable planning terms, as I said, it wouldn't actually require planning permission in its own right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Any more questions, Councillor Grimshaw?
Oh, that's perfectly, yes, I totally understand where Judith's coming from, but just to reiterate that this particular application's got history, and I'm really concerned about it, and but I would just like to say, I just hope if it does go through these conditions, will be properly looked at, and then if enforcement's really needed, that it really does be enforced because of the residents who live around there and the amenities, the smells, etc. But I'm still a little bit concerned about this fence and why the two has to, to be put as one. I really think there should have been, like Councillor Wallace has said, the application for the fence should have come up at a different meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Grimshaw. Councillor Ball.
Thank you. So I just wanted, with regards to the condition about 1 customer per day, how is that going to be policed? And also, where does it put us legally with other businesses on the estate being run from home? Are we suddenly going to see an influx of complaints and demand for change of use applications coming in as well?
Sorry, the how are we going to police the 1 customer a day? That is enforced by the condition. That's a condition that the applicant would have to adhere to. If it came to light that or transpired that wasn't being adhered to, then obviously that's when we start looking at enforcement issues. We would discuss it with the applicant first of all and explain that that's not what the permission is allowing. It would give them the opportunity to correct that, or if they said, okay, yes, we do want 3 customers per day, we could then say, actually, that's not within the terms of your permission, you're going to have to apply again, and we start the process again. Sorry, what was the second point? Opening the floodgates, basically, for other, I mean, anybody can apply for planning permission. I don't think, I don't think it means there's hundreds of hairdressers out there who are going to, jump on the bandwagon. But if it does, they would all have to come to us with the same query, and we would all address them all in the same way on their own merits. Great, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wallace.
Thanks, Chair, for bringing me in again. It was something Mrs Murphy said. I need some clarification. I have to be honest, I've been involved with planning since 1991 and put forward 2 local plans in Wansbeck, but with this new permitted development, I'm not up to speed with it. I haven't just been elected to the council in May. But I think Judith actually said that this needn't have come to this committee because they've got permitted development rights. Are you telling me that is the case with anyone who has permitted rights? That means no councillor could ever bring a planning application in front of a committee.
Chair, it's not a blanket permitted development right. As I say, it depends on the level of the use. It really does have to be a small scale use that can constitute permitted development, and it really does have to be something that isn't impacting, and it can demonstrate it won't impact on the surrounding area in terms of noise, odour, excess traffic, highways that the site can't accommodate. But when it's to such a small scale, when effectively, you know, you could have a friend coming around to have their hair done and it wouldn't really make any difference. It's all about, it's not a change of use as in the same as, you know, you get change of use applications that does come in when at a higher bar, if you like, but these are so small, such small scale, that do constitute permitted development. But again, it's all about each application, each situation being assessed on its own merits, and it's a judgment, and it's based on, you know, those impacts. If it's demonstrated that there won't really be any impacts, then you can look at the permitted development.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it's each case on its own merit, so I won't mention the one that Mrs Murphy looked at that happened next door to me many, many years ago. I turned into a fully fledged business, otherwise I'd have to declare an interest, so I won't mention that. I'm pleased you made that distinction, because I think it is important that we should also add, when residents object to an application, it should always come to a committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Any more questions from members? Councillor Grimshaw.
Thank you. Could I just ask if the resident who spoke for 5 minutes, you know, quoting policies and procedures, has the resident had answers to these that she's raised? Has anyone answered it to see if there's anything within that, the objections, that is valid, please?
Defer that to the officer.
In the report, you can see the policies we considered as part of the application. We took all the written objections in and considered them during the report. For some of the policies that were brought up by the objector were for like more commercial development, due to the scale of this being ancillary, it doesn't trigger those policies. But I'm confident that every policy relevant to this application, material to the planning process, has been duly considered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grimshaw. Councillor Ball.
I just want to clarify, if the fence wasn't involved, would this come to us today?
No, it wouldn't have done.
So just down to the fence for you?
Yeah, it's because the fence is part of the application, which requires planning permission. There are other routes the applicant could have taken on the hairdressing business alone, such as getting a certificate of lawfulness for the development, and it didn't need a full planning application. But people do this, and they're quite within their rights to do it. If there's more than one element requires, if the part of the proposal requires planning permission, you can certainly put it all on one application to be considered, because it still gives you that legal document that says either you've got permission or you haven't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Carty.
It's just a quick question. The amount of objections there is, may I ask why it's been brought to Planning Committee today? Has a councillor called it in, or is it because of the amount of objections?
I believe it was because of the level of public interest that we've brought it towards committee. So during the level of interest, we referred it to the chair to see if he wished it to go to planning committee through the chair delegation procedure. And the chair felt it was best in the public interest to bring it to this planning committee.
So if you had, say, an application which has 15 objections in, and in the future, would that come to committee as well?
If it's got a level of public interest, we would refer it to the chair delegation scheme. So we'd bring it to the chair's attention, and the chair, with the chair plan, would look at the application and decide whether there was public interest to go to committee. There's not a set level of objections. We do take each on its own merit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carty. Any more questions from members?
Could I just ask one more question, please?
Sure.
And it's with regard to, you know, nobody's admitting responsibility with regard to people removing bushes. So I gather now that anybody on any estate now that NC was put in for, you know, just like appearance, etc., just to make the estates look a bit nicer. And anybody who can put a sign up can say now, well, because I can't find out who actually owns it, for all NCC's been looking after it, they have the right to put a fence up and then just apply for planning afterwards. I'm just a little bit confused with that at the moment. Perhaps Will could enlighten me with an answer.
Okay, as the application in that element is retrospective. It's not the land ownership that allows them to do so. The applicant has realised that they were erroneous in doing that and has applied retrospectively. the law does allow for retrospective applications. With regard to the ownership, that's less to do whether it's acceptable or not, but to make sure that the right landowner has been notified and had the due diligence carried out in that manner. So while it is always preferable to get the applications in prior to determination, prior to the works implementing, there's no legal requirement to do so. So again, we would have to take each one on its own merits as they arrive.
But could I just come back now? But unfortunately, it's happening before this happens. You know, and this is just where it's going to, I feel that it's just going to get out of hand, because we're just giving a carte blanche for everybody just to put a sticker sign up and say, I'm going to remove the fence, I'm going to take this fence further out, and I'm going to remove all the bushes that NCC maintain and looks nice on estates like this. This just enhances the ambience of the estate. And so now that's just going to be fences, 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 and there's going to be no nice areas for to look at. It just spoils the estate appearance, I think. Thank you.
Nothing further to add? No.
I would say, unfortunately, it is a case that we would take each one on its own merits as they come forward, I'm afraid.
Right. Councillor Nesbitt.
Mine's just on the fence of itself. Is there still a restriction? I'm just looking at this one being on a, like a corner, you know, because you've got traffic going down the road and obstruction in that way. And is there not a restriction on the height of your fence? Because the way the front sign looks, you've got a low fence and then you've got a very high fence on there.
Yes, we haven't got a set prescription of how high a fence can be next to a highway. Maybe you're looking at the permitted development rights, which gives you how high you can put a fence without planning permission. When it comes to a fence along a highway like this, well, we haven't got a prescribed limit. We refer to highways and they assess it in terms, would it affect the visibility displays? And then they would advise if it was dangerous to oncoming traffic. But in planning with the fence height limits, there is what's called permitted development, how high you can build without permission. But that is 1 metre adjacent to a highway, 2 metres above. That's not a limit on what they can go up to, it's a limit on what they can go up to before they need to apply for planning permission. Does that help?
Not really. So what you're telling me is anybody without permitted dwelling, they could go up to about 7 foot without any planning.
They can always apply for a fence higher than permitted development, but it would be considered on its own merits. For instance, if we felt the fence was too high, we could ask them to reduce it or refuse the application. The 1 metre and 2 metre limits are those that are adjacent and away from the highway, but that's again what they can do without planning permission. In this instance, the application site is adjacent to a public highway, which is the public footpath, so they've got a limit of 1 metre. Anything above that requires planning permission, which has been applied for in this instance.
Right. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Nisbet. Any other questions from members to the planning officers?
Can I just come in one more?
Councillor
I'm terribly sorry,
Grimshaw,
just one
I've
more.
had 3 questions
Yeah,
from you.
just a brief one.
Councillor Grimshaw, I've had 3 questions from you. I'm going to leave it there, okay?
Sorry?
Okay. I've had 3 questions from you already, Councillor Grimshaw. I think 3's enough, okay? Right, we'll now move on to the rules of the debate. So I'll need a proposer and a seconder. Can I have a proposer first, please?
Yeah.
Councillor Parry, thank you. And can I have a seconder as well?
Councillor Parry's got to say what he's proposing.
Sorry, Councillor Parry, can you say what you're going to propose, please?
Yeah, Chair. I've read the report, Chair, and I think the residents' concerns will be addressed in the conditions in the report. Also, the compliance to Wansbeck District Council local plan. The reason it's called Wansbeck District Council local plan is because Ashington Council haven't got a local plan. That's why we're talking about Wansbeck Council. So, in effect, Chair, I'd like to move the application to be granted, subject to the conditions within the report.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Do we now need to move to the debate? Councillor Wallace.
Thanks, Chair. Wansbeck District Local Plan was quite explicit in 2003 as to why this was refused, and it was for 2 basins. I've had time this week to look back at that application. I haven't got the minutes, so I can't tell you if I attended or not. What I can tell you, when we granted planning permission for Fallowfield, which I think was around about 770 homes, the number of time retrospective applications came in was unbelievable. I had one colleague who used to say, retrospective, pull them down. It's because they've ignored planning. That's why. By the way, that chap, we never used to listen to him, but he did become MP for Wansbeck, but never mind, that's another story. That ENV 16E on Wansbeck District Local Plan is now called GP30 on the draft local plan. It's been embraced in that. And it will affect the street scene. Importantly, to me, more importantly, and it was highlighted in what Mrs. Thompson said, we are all responsible for bringing back the vitality onto our high streets. In Ashington, I remember as a youngster, every corner there was a shop. Blyth was the same, if ever I was brave enough to go to Blyth. On the train. I remember the train as well. But, no, joking aside, my wife said to me this afternoon, sorry to go on at length, Chair. My wife said to me this afternoon, where's this street in Bedlington? They sell anti-wrinkle cream and they'll post it out to you. I thought, well, she can't be talking to me, but I did know where the street was. And you're right, there are so many people working from homes. We haven't got a policy that says hairdressers can only work on main streets. We used to have a policy at Wansbeck that stopped gambling places, betting shops, one-armed bandits. You couldn't put them on the main street at Ashington. Along came a different government and said, yes, you can. And this is why I question so much on permitted developments, because it's all new to me. But I'm a firm believer that hairdresser, and I have a lot of sympathy for this young family, a lot of sympathy if you've got a young child, but there's a lot of people at work with young children. Northumberland County Council is very good at giving discretionary rate relief. So it's a question of finding an affordable place in Ashington to operate a hairdressing business. I do not think a home is the right place. And therefore, in addition, with GP 23, where I think there'll be noise, possible smell from solutions and traffic, there's sufficient grounds to refuse this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Any other members want to debate? No? Councillor Reid?
Yeah, what I would say is that what we've been told by the planning officers is that the only thing we can actually refuse is the fence, because the hairdressing thing can operate under permitted development. So I don't see how you can refuse somebody the fence. We can't refuse the salon, is what I've taken from the debate, because whatever happens, all we can do is make them take the fence down. And I would say, as far as the fence is concerned, I'm not a fan of taking up little bits of land, because the estate was designed to have open space in it. But when the experience of living on these estates means that the bits of land aren't properly looked after, they become feral and weeds grow in them, and we don't actually get round to the number of requests I get for getting shrubs cut back that the council haven't got to for a couple of years is quite remarkable, really. So in an ideal world, I would not like to see any of these corner sites enclosed by a fence, because when they were designed, the estates were designed with that open space to make it look friendly, as someone's always said. But the reality of living in these places is that the way to make it look smart actually is to put fences up. So, I don't think we can do anything else. That's why I seconded it, Chair, because I don't think there's really anything else we can do but accept what the officers tell us.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Any other members would like to add anything to the debate? No? Okay.
If that's the case, Councillor Parry can sum up.
Right. Councillor Parry, you can now sum up.
I move it again, Chair, that the application be granted, subject to conditions within the report.
Right. We'll now move to the vote. So, all those in favour of this application, please raise your hands now.
You can just keep your hands up. I'm just going to double check. Sorry.
All those against, raise your hands.
5.
Any abstentions, raise your hand.
Yeah, that's everyone. So that's passed.
When is it by?
Um,
That's 8 for, 5 against, and no abstentions there. So the motion is carried. Right. Now move on to the next item of the agenda. Do you want to bring in Councillor Gallagher now? He's gone, is he?
I think
He's gone home. Right. Right, no problem. Right, I'll now hand back to Councillor Grimshaw. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, all we've got to do now is name the date and time of the next meeting. It will be held on Wednesday the 10th of November. And obviously, I don't quite know where it will be yet, whether it will be here or we'll have to go out and about. But thank you very much, everybody. Is there any urgent business? Can't see anything. Right, could turn the